Child sex slavery is a harrowing reality that continues to plague our world, robbing countless innocent children of their dignity, freedom, and childhood. It is a form of exploitation and abuse that thrives in the shadows, perpetuated by greed, power, and indifference. In the face of such egregious injustice, it is essential to draw upon moral principles and values to guide our response. For many, these moral compasses are found in the teachings of the Bible, which condemn all forms of oppression and advocate for justice, compassion, and human dignity. In this video, we will reveal shocking truths about this grave human rights violation. What you will learn will blow your mind. We will also explore this issue through the lens of biblical perspectives, examining verses that speak directly against such atrocities. Additionally, we will discuss practical steps that individuals and communities can take to help combat child sex trafficking and support its victims. Join us as we address these critical issues and seek to make a difference. The Bible contains timeless truths that condemn all forms of exploitation and oppression, including the heinous crime of child sex trafficking. Let us delve into some of these verses that speak directly against such atrocities. Exodus 21:16, anyone who kidnaps someone is to be put to death, whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession. This verse unequivocally condemns the act of kidnapping and selling individuals, recognizing the inherent value and dignity of every person. It emphasizes the severity of the crime and underscores the necessity of eradicating such evil from society. Deuteronomy 24:7. If someone is caught kidnapping a fellow Israelite and treating or selling them as a slave, the kidnapper must die. You must purge the evil from among you. Similarly, Deuteronomy 24:7 echoes this sentiment, stating that those who engage in the kidnapping and trafficking of individuals must be held accountable and that such evil must be eradicated from society. It emphasizes the need for justice and the protection of the vulnerable. Child sex slavery is a form of human trafficking, which involves the exploitation of children for sexual purposes. According to a 2012 study by the International Labour Organization, there were about 5.5 million children, aged 17 and below, trafficked globally, both for sex and labor, between 2002 and 2011. Child sex slavery can take many forms, such as prostitution, pornography, child marriage, sex tourism, and ritual abuse. Some of the factors that make children vulnerable to sex trafficking are poverty, lack of education, violence, discrimination, displacement, and social exclusion. 1 Timothy 1, verses 9 through 11, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous person, but for the lawless and insubordinate, for the ungodly and for sinners, for the unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for fornicators, for sodomites, for kidnappers, for liars, for perjurers, and if there is any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. 1 Timothy 1, verses 9 and 10 lists kidnappers among those contrary to sound doctrine, highlighting the moral reprehensibility of profiting from the exploitation and trafficking of individuals. It reminds believers that such actions are incompatible with the teachings of Christ and stand in direct opposition to principles of love, compassion, and justice. Why doesn't God stop this if He is an all-loving and powerful God? He has the ability to stop it, so why doesn't He? These are innocent children that have done nothing wrong. This is a question most people in the world have. Did you know that many of the children that are sold as sex slaves were actually sold by their parents? According to a Wikipedia article on child trafficking in India, some parents sell their children to traffickers due to poverty, debt, or cultural practices. The article cites a study that found that 76% of the child workers in the silk industry were sold by their parents, and that 10% of them were sexually abused at work. According to a Wikipedia article on child exploitation, some parents in countries such as Nigeria, Ghana, and Thailand may sell their children to brothels or pimps, or allow them to be exploited by sex tourists. The article cites a report that estimated that 30% of the children being exploited in Ghana were sold by their parents, and that some parents in Thailand received monthly payments from the brothel owners or pimps who exploited their children. According to a report by Save the Children, some parents in countries such as Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine may sell their children to traffickers who promise them jobs or education in Western Europe, but instead subject them to sexual slavery. The report states that parental involvement in child trafficking is often motivated by economic hardship, lack of awareness, or coercion by traffickers. There are several videos, documentaries, and literature on investigations done around the world revealing that parents sell their children or even pimp their children. According to the Counter-Trafficking Data Collaborative, almost half of identified cases of child trafficking begin with some family member involvement. I included the link below. The U.S. Department of State's website says the following. In a report from 2017, the International Organization for Migration indicated that approximately 41% of incidents involving child trafficking are orchestrated by family members and/or caregivers. It's worth noting that familial trafficking, wherein a family member or guardian acts as the trafficker or facilitates the sale of the child to a third-party trafficker, often goes unnoticed by governments and organizations dedicated to combating human trafficking. I added a link in the description below. Parents are selling their children for various reasons. We can blame poverty, but not all parents in poverty sell their children, so it is not a necessity to sell their children. They do it as an easy way out. Other parents who don't sell their children find other ways to support themselves and their families. God does not condone the exploitation of children or anyone, and according to the Bible, this is a major sin. Leviticus 19:29. Do not degrade your daughter by making her a prostitute, or the land will turn to prostitution and be filled with wickedness. If God is real, then why does this evil exist? Now, the Bible tells us, God created the world for humans, and the world was good. We were given dominion over the earth and the authority to subdue it. When we turned our back on God and agreed with Satan, we handed our dominion and power to rule over to Satan. Genesis 1, verses 26 through 28. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." There was no evil or sin until mankind chose to disobey God. Key words here, we chose, once we chose to turn or back on God and believe Satan. We voluntarily handed the keys of this world to Satan. Why can't God just snap his fingers and correct what happened? I do not know, but it is not as simple as we think. Because if it was as easy as God snapping his fingers, then why did God have to send Jesus to die for us? Jesus suffered. He was persecuted, tortured, and crucified to save those of us who receive him. This is the Almighty God coming to earth and being tortured and killed by his own creation. We don't understand everything that happens in the spirit world, but because we do not understand everything doesn't give us the right to blame God. We are here to tell you the Bible does not condone slavery. In order to comprehend the Bible's context on slavery, we first need to understand ancient culture. It is important to note that modern slavery is not the same as historical slavery. In ancient times, people became slaves for various reasons, and the institution of slavery was quite prevalent in ancient societies. Here are some of the reasons why individuals might become slaves in biblical times: debt bondage, war captivity, poverty, criminal punishment, and birth. People might become slaves to repay debts as captured enemies during wars or due to extreme poverty, which could force them or their family members into servitude for survival. Additionally, slavery could serve as a criminal punishment or be inherited from parents who were already enslaved. The Bible reflects these practices, as seen in Leviticus 25:39, which addresses the treatment of Israelites who sold themselves into servitude due to poverty. Leviticus 25:39. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to you, do not make them work as slaves. It's important to note that while slavery was widespread in the ancient world, including in biblical times, the Bible contains various regulations and moral teachings regarding the treatment of slaves. God instructed slave masters to treat their slaves with respect. Exodus 23:9. Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. This verse emphasizes empathy and compassion for foreigners, reminding the Israelites of their own experience as foreigners in Egypt, and instructing them not to oppress or mistreat foreigners living among them, which includes foreign slaves, as Israelis were slaves in Egypt themselves. The following verses may appear to be harsh, but let's dissect these verses to see what Paul was trying to advise. Ephesians 6:5. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. Serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do, whether they are slave or free. Paul is advising slaves to respect and fear their masters from their heart so that they can gain favor with their slave masters. In ancient times, when slaves gained favor with their masters, their circumstances could improve in various ways, depending on the particular situation and the attitudes of their masters. Here are some possible outcomes for slaves who gained favor with their masters. They might enjoy better living conditions, such as improved food, clothing, and shelter, or even gain privileges like more comfortable quarters. In some cases, this favor could lead to freedom or manumission as a reward for their loyalty and hard work. Favored slaves might also have opportunities for education and skill development, enhancing their value and future prospects. Additionally, they could experience social mobility, gaining respect and influence within their community. Masters who valued their slaves might also permit them to marry and maintain personal relationships, showing consideration for their well-being within the constraints of slavery. In the Old Testament, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. His integrity and hard work led to him being put in charge of his master's household, where he had significant authority, Genesis 39:4. Eventually, he rose to become second in command over all of Egypt, with only Pharaoh above him, Genesis 41:41. Paul could not change slavery, as it was a huge part of the ancient world, but he could advise them on how to better their situation. Paul also gave instruction to slave masters on how they should treat their slaves. And masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. In these verses, Paul clearly is telling slave masters not to threaten their slaves. Let's see exactly what the word threaten means. The Oxford Dictionary tells us the following. The word threaten has several meanings: to state one's intention, to take hostile action against someone in retribution for something done or not done. Cause someone or something to be vulnerable or at risk, in danger. Express one's intention to harm or kill someone. Masters were to treat their slaves right and fair, the way they expected God to treat them. Colossians 4:1. Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and fair, because you know that you also have a master in heaven. Similar to the passage in Ephesians, this verse from the letter to the Colossians encourages masters to act justly and fairly towards their slaves, recognizing their common accountability to God as their ultimate authority. As we confirmed, slavery was indeed a common and accepted practice in many ancient civilizations throughout history. It was a pervasive institution that existed in various forms and degrees of severity in societies around the world. In ancient times, slavery was often viewed as a natural part of the social order, and it played a significant role in the economies, labor systems, and power structures of many civilizations. While the New Testament includes instructions on how to behave within the existing social structures, such as those addressing slaves and masters, the broader message of equality in Christ challenges the legitimacy of these structures. Galatians 3:28 states, "There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." This and many other verses reflect a vision where all are seen as equal in the eyes of God, suggesting a theological foundation that opposes the practice of slavery and other forms of social inequality. Today, slavery is illegal. The practice of slavery has been universally condemned by the international community, and numerous international treaties and conventions have been established to prohibit and combat slavery and related forms of exploitation. Child sex slavery is a grave violation of human rights and human dignity that demands a collective response. As people of faith, we are called to stand against injustice, advocate for the oppressed, and work towards a world where every child is safe, valued, and free. By drawing upon the principles and teachings of the Bible, we can confront the darkness of child sex slavery with the light of love, compassion, and justice. Let us commit ourselves to taking action, raising our voices, and working tirelessly to end the scourge of child sex trafficking and support its victims. Together, guided by the moral imperatives of our faith, we can make a meaningful difference in the lives of vulnerable children and build a more just and compassionate world for all. Psalm 82, verses 3 and 4, "Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed, rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked." This passage from the Psalms urges individuals to stand up for the rights of the vulnerable and oppressed, emphasizing the importance of protecting those who are marginalized and in need. As followers of Christ and advocates for justice, we are called to take action against the scourge of child sex slavery. Here are some practical steps that individuals and communities can take to make a difference. Raise awareness. Education and awareness are critical in combating child sex trafficking. Individuals can educate themselves and others about the signs of trafficking, the tactics used by traffickers, and the impact of trafficking on victims and communities. Churches, schools, and community organizations can host awareness-raising events, distribute informational materials, and invite guest speakers to address the issue. Support anti-trafficking organizations. There are numerous organizations dedicated to combating human trafficking and supporting its victims. Individuals can support these organizations through financial donations, volunteer work, and advocacy efforts. By supporting anti-trafficking organizations, we can contribute to the rescue, rehabilitation, and empowerment of survivors, as well as the prevention of future trafficking. Advocate for policy change. Advocacy plays a crucial role in addressing the systemic factors that contribute to human trafficking. Individuals can advocate for stronger laws and policies at the local, national, and international levels to combat trafficking, prosecute traffickers, and protect victims. This may involve contacting elected officials, participating in advocacy campaigns, and supporting legislative initiatives that prioritize anti-trafficking efforts. Provide support to survivors. Survivors of child sex trafficking require comprehensive support and care to heal from their trauma and rebuild their lives. Individuals and communities can offer practical assistance, such as housing, counseling, job training, and educational opportunities to survivors in their communities. By providing support and resources to survivors, we can help them reclaim their dignity, autonomy, and hope for the future. Friends, let us not remain silent in the face of such injustice. Let us raise our voices, take action, and work tirelessly to end the scourge of child sex trafficking. Together, guided by the principles of love, compassion, and justice found in the Bible, we can make a difference. If you believe you may have information about a trafficking situation, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline toll-free hotline at 1-888-373-7888. Anti-trafficking hotline advocates are available 24/7 to take reports of potential human trafficking. You can also text the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 233733. Message and data rates may apply. Additionally, we've provided a link to the Tim Tebow Foundation. If you wish to contribute and support the campaign against child sexual abuse and exploitation, you can do so through the provided link. While we're not affiliated with the Tebow Foundation, we deeply admire the genuine and remarkable work Tim Tebow is carrying out worldwide. Check out the next video, What Will World War III Look Like in 2024 or 2025 Potential Prophecy of Nuclear War in the Book of Revelations. Until next time, take care and God bless.